urbano por la Universidad de Columbia. Fundador de Nardi Associates, una firma internacional de diseño. Es CEO de Architran Plus, firma arquitectónica y de desarrollo constructivo ubicada en México y Estados Unidos. Es profesor emérito de arquitectura por la California State Polytechnic University, Pomona. Enseña arquitectura y diseño urbano en la Universidad de Tulane, así como en universidades de Buenos Aires y Córdoba. Ha enseñado sustentabilidad en Pincer College, Campus Claremont. Fundador del Seminario Internacional sobre Diseño y Sustentabilidad llamado Fórum Mazatlán. El arquitecto Nardi ha recibido diversos premios en los Estados Unidos y de manera internacional. Bienvenido, arquitecto.
Hello. Can you hear me? Yeah. Antes de hacer mi presentación, voy a hacer un pedido de disculpas. Como ustedes verán, por supuesto, yo hablo español. No sé si lo hablo bien, pero lo hablo. Además, lo hablo con un acento muy sospechoso para muchos mexicanos. Pero cuando me preguntaron en qué idioma iba a hacer esta presentación, opté por el inglés. No porque me avergüenzo de mi propio idioma, sino porque después de 30 y pico de años de estar enseñando y practicando arquitectura, lo he hecho fundamentalmente en inglés. Naturalmente me siento un poco más cómodo en la terminología técnica para hacerlo en ese idioma. Y esa es la razón fundamental por la cual hoy mi presentación va a ser en inglés. Yo me siento muy contento de estar aquí en Guadalajara. Yo ya he dado un seminario hace unos años en esta universidad. Como habrán escuchado en la introducción de mi actividad, yo he practicado y practico arquitectura en varias partes, y una de ellas en la cual estoy muy conectado es aquí en México. Y yo tengo oficinas y mi casa, mi segunda casa en la ciudad de Mazatlán. Por lo cual no tengo que explicarle mi conexión muy profunda con el medio del Estado mexicano. Cuando yo soy un arquitecto, he sido enseñado arquitectura toda mi vida. Y let me go back to English now, and apologize because I have to go back to what I feel a little more comfortable to go through. The name of this presentation, it is a little pompous, because when you say holistic, sound like the Holy See, sound like something very probably not so far away from the approach of this university, but I feel very connected to understand that design is one of the several components of this complex world that we are facing. For the last 15, 20 years or 30 years, the world is taking a very serious look of the concept of sustainability. You probably know that everybody's talking about green architecture, LEED certification, etc., which is one of the, is any politician of the world today, which is talking about any message for the world, is referring in one way or the other to the concept of sustainability. So it's becoming what in English would say a buzzword. Para decirlo en español, y voy a pasar al español ahora, es una palabra como si fuera ya un eslogan, es como un estándar, sigo usando palabras inglesas, pero de alguna manera palabras que nosotros en español entendemos. So, when I got involved in designing, I explained to my American colleagues that one of the advantages of being raised in a third world country, and I say this because the concept of third world is very controversial in any way, is that you get used to deal with restrictions of technology Okay, that's typical. When I came to study architecture in the United States, one of my surprises was that people were not using any more operable windows because, you know, air conditioning was in the early 70s or 60s, or it was the natural way of designing a building. So why would we open a window? At that moment, nobody was taking care about energy. But in my case, that I was coming from my native Argentina, where to have air conditioning was almost unknown or a very rare privilege, designers were needed to understand that we have to deal with nature. So cross ventilation, good orientations, et cetera, would think that it was, as, you know, givens in teaching architecture or being educated as an architect. So I would say, somebody said one day, which is an interesting concept, that the poverty, this is kind of awful common, but poverty is probably one of the best recycling mechanisms, if you think about it. Poor people are forced to recycle in one way or the other. So the word of excess forgot that the need to deal with those concepts. So when I start designing buildings, I move, and you will see my work here too today. I move to this incredible, fantastic experience of creating spaces and assuming that design and habitat, which is what an architect is supposed to be dealing with, was the fundamental focus of my practice. I don't resent what I did, but over the years I've been reflecting on that. And the reason why finally I came with this, not with a new concept, but with this kind of approach about sustainability, is because I learned how beyond the physical environment, beyond the structural demands, beyond being concerned about the seismic forces, et cetera, it's a whole new, a number of other issues that they are impacting why or how sustainable or sustainability should be addressed. So I don't want to be too academic, but if I want to use a concept and understanding what sustainability is about the balance of the relationship in between the nature and the man-made effort or the man-made act. Man acting, interacting, so you are sustainable or something becomes sustainable if that equilibrium or potential balance is not broken. If those fields of the scales are pretty much even. Here's nature, here man-made actions. So how you achieve that? So the whole presentation today will be to make us think that when you, engineers, because mostly this audience is constituted by engineers, when you are focused in making an efficient building, and I saw the presentation of my colleague and friend, Federico Alba, which is absolutely true. That's the way they should be practicing in the way of engineering. It's a whole other dimension beyond that point where technology is a factor that defines how an environment has to be sustainable. And I want to deal with that. I want to try to present the challenge for you to think. One of my fears in life has been, and still is, to think small. And when I say to think small, not necessarily means that I need to forget to take care of the details. Details, I mean, you can be think big, and let's talk about a structure, but if the connection, if a metal plate that's supporting a column related with a beam is not perfectly resolved in detail, the whole building may collapse or can collapse. So the details are important, but the details only are important within a big vision. Because if you don't have the big vision, you lose, again, that idea of how this world has to be sustainable. Let me, I don't know, how can I change this one? That's my challenge. Technology is still my challenge. Can you show me to change the slide? Oh, thank you. So you will see in these two screens what I define were the basic components of holistic sustainability. So you see, traditionally, this has been my area of intervention. All my life, since I graduated in architecture, that's what I've been doing, the physical environment. That's what I thought, but it's not true. In one way or the other, in many ways, I would say, constantly, I've been directly or indirectly involved with the other areas that you see listed in this diagram. I've been related with the political environment. If you're an architect, or if you are a professional practicing in a community, sooner or later, I'm not talking about political elections, I'm not talking about supporting a candidate. I'm talking about you are involved in any of those issues in the United States, where I practice architecture, or I practice here in Mexico too. One of my major time investments is dealing with government approvals, with zoning regulations, with, the goodwill or the badwill of the building permit official who doesn't like my architecture or believe that I need to move the window to the right because doesn't balance well according to the aesthetics of one given city. I was talking to one colleague last night that he lives in Berkeley, and he will lecture today, and he was telling me some of the challenges that he's facing in an addition of his own house, and I don't want to reveal the details, in living in Berkeley. So in one way, that's what we are. We are immersed in that political arena. And I want to explore more about that. The second one is the social component of sustainability. When we are designing or when we are creating any action that has to do with the man-made environment, we are making impacts in the social balance of the society. And you see, it has to do with that word which is so important, which is quality of life. Quality of life has to do with our community, our neighbors, our opponents, our enemies, our friends, whatever we have. It has to do with the quality of life. So it's a social interaction constantly existing when a human being, a man or a woman, is modifying the natural environment. When I studied anthropology many years ago, in one of my courses in Columbia University was trying to define how the word evolved. And I remember that one guy, that was one of the teachers, one guy, really an eminence in the field, but he explained to us how the civilization, according to his analysis and other anthropology, was developed. And he said, there were two essential groups at the beginning of the times. One was the man of the desert, and the man representing a species, the man and the woman of the desert. And the other one was the man of the jungle, the man of the natural environment. These two groups, anthropologically speaking, develop a new kind of word, the man of the desert, essentially where the fundamental civilization developed. Why? Because the desert was offering a constant challenge. So the man was forced to dominate the desert. And that's where agriculture was born, that's what, irrigation was created, that's what natural farming was. With the man of the jungle, easier life, they were stretching their hands, getting a fruit, or going to the river and fishing a fish. So, and that was before we were dealing with desertification, as you probably remember. Maybe it was something similar to be called desertification, but I don't know, I don't think so. So, when you understand that concept, how the community developed, how the people relate to each other, you understand that part of that sustainability is associated with the social component. The next one is very more familiar for all of you because it's a tangible thing. It's the issue that we know how to deal with. Is Federico Alba estimating how many kilos per metro cuadrado, per square meters, he has to use to calculate a structure, and how stable that structure to be. Myself understanding functional components and aesthetics and proportions and et cetera, which is a lot of that. And then finally, and very important, the technological responses. We are living the 21st century, so I'm not denying the importance of the technological gadgets. What I'm saying, technological gadget is like it happened with the phone and with the computers. That evolution never will end. Every day, Apple will produce a new iPhone that we need to run to change it. And it's part of the incredible scientific evolution. Every time we want to have a new insulation system, or a new way of resolving the rebars for a new structural system or partition, is something very important to be connected with. But that is a very moving target. And the moving target is the result of the science and the technological progress. So we are very familiar with that line. And we know exactly, they say technological response is an innovation. But finally, right there, I put a little thing, is respect for nature, which is part of that balance that I was talking about. Then I'm moving to the other factor. And that other factor as well is part of the sustainability. Is the financial, economic and financial. In our activity, and we are professionals here of the built environment, nothing makes sense ultimately if it's not incorporating a financial economic component. Not only to accommodate ourselves to a given budget, is as well to understand that more that we take from one side, less that we are able to give to the other one. We are not dealing with unlimited resources. I'm talking about financial resources. So to understand that part of that balance that I'm talking about, those fields of the scale, the financial component has to be very well studied, very well analyzed, very well understood. And if we are responsible professionals, we need to understand the two scales of the financial component. The immediate scale, which is related to our action, what we are doing today, in our project, in our design, in our calculation, in our structure, whatever we are working with. And then the impact that our action, at least to keep it on the back of your mind, the impact that our action takes in something else is, going back, part of their social responsibility. you see how they start connecting with each other. These are segments, but they are intertwined. They are completely related with each other. And then finally, the legal parameters. I'm working in the United States mostly, and in China. In China today, it's changing, but anything goes. A little bit what used to be Mexico a few years ago. When I'm saying anything goes means, in many ways for architects like me that I like to do kind of a weird things, it's fantastic because, you know, you don't have all the limitations that the codes are imposing and this and those. In China is a place of exploration and madness in many ways. You know, you see the most crazy buildings. Some of the technological responses are pretty bad and some extremely good. So the legal parameters, United States is becoming an extremely restricted society. Very interesting. You know, my family is Italian, and the United States always blamed the fascism and the Nazism. And in many ways, and this is not a political statement, but it's true, it's becoming an extremely restricted society. In many ways, it's good, because you know where you're moving. You have the boundaries well established. The legal system in general works, that I have to say, in general works. Hay menos mordidas. They did not, it mean menos. I didn't say there is no, they don't exist, menos. So in many ways, that's what we are dealing with. But we need to understand EPA, which is the Environmental Protection Agency, is a mother of all the environmental analysis. And so you need to understand the legal limitations when you are dealing now with design strategies about the built environment. There's no way that you can avoid that. And then it is important, and that's what the majority of the countries are behind. It's very important to understand that when the judicial system and the legal framework was created by founding fathers of any country, you know, in the United States, in the 1774, in this country in the 1800s, and et cetera, from the Roman Code, many things had been reanalyzed, reinterpreted. The world is looking to issues in a completely different way today. So the law is very heavy. To modify the legal structure is very complicated, but it's something that if we want to obtain a holistic sustainability, is something that is necessary to be visited. So this presentation today, and this is my only kind of a political statement, I will go more than technology now, but today I urge you, the young generation of people who are graduating or very close to graduating, please use a global vision to understand where you're working without losing the details. I will be telling to my students when I teach architecture that when you are a designer, you need to use bifocals. You know what the bifocals is? You know that in one side, you need to look to the horizon, way ahead of you, to see the big picture. And the other side, changing your view, you need to understand the details. That connection in between both probably is the fundamental success of a good, sustainable product. Oh, no, the direction. I will go a little faster with this slide, but you can read if you read English, but I will go quickly in some of the fundamental concepts. And I think this is a strong statement. I say the transition to sustainability is a change from a linear understanding of the process of things to a more cyclical understanding where nothing is created and nothing is destroyed, and its existence is forever. So this is not my saying. It's a quote from a guy who was associated many years ago with Berkeley. That was Christopher Alexander, and it's an interesting way of looking to the world that we are involved with. What happened today? Let me tell you, one of the classes that I teach at the university is called Bridging the New World. I wrote a book about it. It's a class that is dealing with the evolution through architecture of the Americas, of the Western Hemisphere. Not the America, United States, the Americas, from Alaska to Tierra del Fuego, including Brazil, by the way. No, I'm joking. So that way of looking to the world, I never been personally very fond of history per se. I have and I tell my class, I say, listen guys, don't take numbers or dates that I'm announcing in my class, because probably I will say that the Renaissance was developed in the 1800s, which is not true. Because the important thing that you need to understand about history is what do you learn from history, more than maybe memorizing names of places. It's okay. If you do it, it's better. So what I learned from history, and I have the privilege to have a great professor that was Louis Kahn in Columbia University. Louis Kahn, that was a great architect, he said then, what you learn to history is to relate to history for analogies. In other words, that out of the history, you can produce responses in your contemporary language, which is, I think, is fantastic. And that's one of the dilemmas of a designer today, because people are hanging on history. So people are coming to my office and say, Mr. Nardi, I know that you are Italian descent. Oh, we love Tuscany. Can you design for us a Tuscanian house? No way. I don't design Tuscany. Why? I mean, we are in the 21st century. Tuscanian house was built in the 1400, 1500. I don't imitate history. You do not imitate history. It's absurd. You can relate to history, but you don't imitate history, because that's a fake. This is Las Vegas Disney approach, is to have, I don't know if you've been in Las Vegas, fun place to go, but if you go to the Venetian, my family is from that area, and you go to the Venetian in Las Vegas and you walk inside of the hotel, I say, wow, this is Piazza San Marco, which is now a small version, and then you see the ceiling of Venice, which is really an artificial, ceiling, painted with clouds, and you have the gondolas and the people singing in a poor Italian, because they don't know Italian. So the whole thing, yes, for those people who are not going to Venice, Italy, that's a great solution, but you cannot imitate history. You cannot imitate, downtown Guadalajara or Teotihuacan. Please, how you can imitate Teotihuacan? It's impossible. It's ridiculous. Or Chichen Itza. So I'm bringing this example, because when I was reading history, and I have to admit, when I took architecture in Argentina, and in a good school, with a good professor of history, he mentioned about this one, but in a sort of in comparison with Machu Picchu, or with Teotihuacan, or with Tenochtitlan, or whatever, the great of the Egyptian pyramids, this is really a fundamental work, because it's kind of a tiny work in comparison. But something, I started studying these people. And I realized that the Anasazis, the guy who did Mesa Verde in Colorado, were one of the most incredible, sustainable designers. They understood technology, orientation, thermal walls, evaporating cooling systems, everything that we can imagine today in our super developed technology, they address it themselves. And I say, wow, if we understand history in that way, without trying to build like the Anasasis, because we have another technology, we have another requirements, people will not accept to be living inside of that cavern, etc., etc. But if we can relate to those elements of history, that's the important part. And we kind of forget about that. Say, nature has mechanisms to control overpopulating when species are reach the holding capacity of its environment. Why this is important? Because in every time that we are building a building, that we are occupying a space, that we are modifying the natural environment that already have been pretty much modified. We need to understand that we are breaking, or we are invading, or we are challenging that natural equilibrium, the natural balance. And I think that that's part, as a designer, responsibility that I have. And now we are moving to the political realm that I already mentioned. And I'm using an interesting example, which is probably very, very dear to my colleague Paulo here. That is Brasilia. You know, from the environmental point of view, the traditional environmental point of view, this is my, and he can probably disagree with me, but this is my approach. Brasilia is a blasphemy. It's a blasphemy. Why? I will tell you why. Because Brasilia was creating, contradicting, this one has to be qualified for a LEED certification. Brasilia will get so many negative points that it never will support, not even, I'm not talking about platinum. No, I'm not talking about doesn't exist, never will get a LEED certification. Why? I will tell you why. Let me give you some examples, because I know very well about Brasilia. Being in Brasilia, I know the history of Brasilia. Brasilia was built carrying materials by air, because they did not even have a road to build the city, okay? So one of the LEED certification conditions is how you reduce transportations, because transportation means fuel consumption, polluting the air, et cetera, et cetera. So in that area is absurd. Two, the whole design of the building, of the city was not really a reflection to environmental sensitivity, was an expression of a country that was seeing themselves as with a new vision, with Juscelino Kubitschek, that was the president at that time, and with Lucio Costa and Niemeyer, the urban designer and the architect, the project that we are doing, creating this modernist, incredible dream, et cetera, et cetera. You know, located in a place that was a challenge. They were forced to create artificial bodies of water. They will need to deforest portions to give places for roads. I mean, if you analyze Brasilia in a typical process of environmental solution, doesn't comply with the basic rules. But on the other side, and now I'm going to the political realm. Politically speaking, Brasilia became one of the most incredible sustainable acts, because in a country that was hanging on the coast, in a country where the senators and the politicians love to be in Rio, well, who doesn't like to be in Rio, you know, and they were forced for years, many of the politicians Imagine for a minute that the federal government move el Palacio de Gobierno from El Zócalo to, let me see where. I'm trying to imagine in a place in Mexico. I don't know, in the middle of the Sonora Desert. I'm saying anything. And all these politicians that I used to go today to the social clubs and, you know, and going through the life that they enjoy, et cetera, they are forced to go to a place which is not the most hospitable way. So politically speaking, that's what I'm using Brasilia. Politically speaking, only from that point of view, it has some sustainability qualities as a gesture. The reason why I'm using this extreme is because I want to show why these different components has to be analyzed with a big vision. I had the privilege, a few years ago, to design this project, which is partially built. You probably, I don't know, some of you have been there, but Beijing, the city of Beijing, has a historic court that is defined by two fundamental portions. One is Forbidden City, la ciudad perdida, la ciudad prohibida, and then the Temple of Heaven, el Templo del Cielo. I have the privilege to design a property right across the street, like in English you say on the kitty corner, right across the street from the Temple of Heaven, one of the most respected monuments in Beijing, both from the Ming Dynasty. So, I'm sorry. When I work in that project, one of the things is I need to have, and that's a political decision, I need to have some respect for this area. And I was a Western architecture, you know, a guy coming from the Western side. And I remember that I went with my project to the city of Beijing, and I showed this diagram. You see, it's in Chinese as well. That diagram addressed one of the fundamental concepts of the Chinese culture, which is the Pakwa. Pakwa is the number 8, is a number of magic. And the number 8 was connected to the way that the Temple of Heaven was done. So I was designing a new building, but the new building was kind of a reference to that history without trying to mimic the Temple of Heaven, which is impossible. So that's what I said at the top, historical legacy reflecting on urban organization. So you need to consider, if you are a foreigner like me, going to China, that I didn't want to do in China, Manhattan, or El Zócalo. Doesn't make any sense. You know, when you are in a place like that, you need to understand what that place is about. This is part of the political realm. This is not just the context, the historical context. We are dealing now with the social component. And I'm showing Marrakech. And you're in Mexico. Remember, part of this lecture as well has been related more to United States, because Mexicans understand better the concept of density. Americans, they don't. The Americans inherited a lot of the British culture, which is the dream of a house in a green field, okay? So in the United States, you can have a small lot, but in general, in the majority of the cities throughout the country, people like to have a little setback from the neighbor. Even that is a very tiny one, that doesn't make any sense because they give you, less than a meter in between the two lots. But this is the sense of being independent. It's part of that structure of being like that. So density in the United States is a problem. And why is a problem? Because density has an impact in cost. As you know, you are civil engineers. Infrastructure is very much impacted by density because if you need to serve on a population which is dispersed, spread out in a territory, is completely different if you are dealing with a population which is dense. That's really. This is a reality. So architects today, designers, we need to understand how to deal with the concept of density, how to maintain people's spaces while understanding the social cost that a low density has on the world. Not everybody anymore can have the privilege to have a big backyard, a big front yard, or a great garden behind a wall like in El Pedregal. It's very difficult to try to get that stuff today. It's very impossible. Somebody pay the consequences for that. And I'm showing density and identity are very well connected. And I'm showing this incredible, beautiful image, which is a city in China. The reason why I'm showing this one, some a very romantic image, but the problem today is that our lifestyle is changing. So when you are dealing with the concept of density, it's not anymore what Marrakesh used to be, or it's a little bit yet, because the people don't have neither the time to interact. They are very alienated by the daily life. So, you know, the socialization with your neighbor doesn't really exist much. I've been living in neighborhoods in the United States for 15, 20 years, and I never see the faces of my neighbor, which is crazy, you know. One day walking in the street, say, how are you? Where do you live? Oh, next door. Next door? Yeah, wow. I've been here 15 years. I never saw you. No, you never look at me, he said. You're right, probably true. So we are dealing with another completely different challenge. The social responsibility, quality of life. That's the key. Quality of life is something that everybody's talking about. We are talking about every day. Say we need to improve our quality of life. How we do it? Well, you have an advantage. The majority of this audience are young people. So if at this age you don't have a quality of life, you better quit because you have a quality of life. The problem is when years are passing, you are conceding, you are becoming more complicated with more responsibilities, with more alienation. So how you return the quality of life? So one of the ways of supporting that quality of life, it has to do obtaining a well-balanced sustainability. And that's part of the concept that I'm addressing with. And I'm showing some examples. Being an architect, and I need to talk as an architect. I'm sorry, engineers, I have to speak as an architect. You know, this has been my life. So one of the things that is a challenge today in the design process is how sustainability becomes legible. How you understand that a project is sustainable without giving you a manual. You know, one of my disagreements with the desertification, and I'm sorry, by the way, you will see a building that is the first that I designed, so I need to be careful not to criticize Leeds because when I got it, I was so proud. So one of the problems of Leeds certification is that they use a ranking system of points, but not necessarily they analyze the core of the problem is how a building has been designed. One that you qualify with the check marks, and you say, you know, energy consumption under 15 kilowatts. Oh, this one, then you got the points, you go to the color points, and you are LEED certified. I don't want to tell you how many horrendous, ugly buildings in the United States have been receiving this certification. But vomiting buildings, buildings that you say, I don't want to have it not even near me, but they are LEED certified. So the developers are saying, excuse me, I am asking for this amount of money because my building is LEED certified. So We need to be careful about that. Then, the aesthetic legibility is how, without a manual, when you are walking a structure, you understand that that building is sustainable, what it tells you. Let me give you an example. When you are walking to a Greek temple or a Renaissance building, the architecture of this, the expression of these spaces, we are very much related, reflecting something of that era, or the majesty, or the intellectual spaces of the Greeks, or the orthodoxy and organization of the Renaissance people, or the classical buildings, or et cetera, or the Baroque, the complication of the Baroque buildings. I'm talking about styles. Is something today that we can call a sustainable design style? Not necessarily. So one of the debates among the architectural community today is how you express that legibility is by putting, that I'm doing it by the way, green walls in the front and say, oh, this is a building that has a green wall. So yes, it's sustainable. Not necessarily, yes, but the way of identifying a language that can express that concept is one of the challenges that the design world is experiencing today. This is part of the design strategy. This is an interesting project done by an American architect, Stephen Hall, in Beijing. It's called the MoMA. And then I'm showing other buildings. None of these buildings have been designed by me, but I'm showing because I think that they are good example. Even this one, that is a very nothing super exciting building, but I've been inside of this project and really has certain quality that you feel a sense of balance inside of the space. And I don't want to tell you about this because it's amazing. Or the next one. Oh, I'm sorry. Today I was talking to, I don't know if he's here, is one student who has a store right there that he was showing me a green wall with hydroponics. And I told him, you need to go to Paris and see the work of my friend Jean Nouvel. And this is the building. This is a museum right on behind the Notre Dame along the Seine. And you see the Brandy Museum, and he used the entire wall, the entire building is designed, covered by green. And this is this is part of his interpretation of being legible with sustainable design. Renzo Piano did this amazing building using natural materials in New Caledonia, creating concept of nests. Oh, I'm sorry. And now, because I don't leave this audience without bragging around or bragging about what I do a little bit, I will show some of the works that I've been doing trying to deal with the concept of sustainability. This is, I consider this a case study. It's a building that I designed on the desert, Palm Desert, California. Is from University of California, Riverside campus, Coachella Valley campus. And I analyzed, the desert is a very demanding environment. It's very brutal. Remember when I start the presentation today to say about the man of the desert versus the man of the jungle. The desert always demands, very strong decisions because you are dealing with a lack of water or an excess of sun or with sunstorms, with a lot of environmental challenges. So when I designed this building, I went through the desert and I analyzed 3 fundamental factors of this area. One was the wind, the other one was the water, and the other one was the earth. In this area, to give you an idea, there are a lot of wind farms. I mean, the energy is already created through an incredible number of wind farms. When you drive toward Palm Desert, Palm Springs, et cetera, you see those huge, windmills, molinos de viento, that they, feed the whole energy of the region. So yes, the wind is a fundamental factor, and the wind, it could be used well. It's a fundamental design tool that you need to take advantage of it. Instead of being afraid of the wind, converting the wind. It's like those glides, those aeroplanos, that they use the wind, the thermal, to fly without using energy. So wind, well analyzed, is a fundamental beneficial factor. For the structure, it's complicated because you add natural forces. But for the design of the space, could be great. So I try to analyze the project. So remember my connection with history. I took my client, a corporate client who donated money to this project, Mr. Heckman, to visit Pueblo Bonito. He took me on his impressive Learjet. We landed nearby, and he said, "Why you take me there?" I said, "Richard, I want to show you a project that maybe can help us to understand what to do with this one." Pueblo Bonito, done by the Anasasis, those natives, Indians that I showed you before. This is the plan of the Pueblo Bonito. What Pueblo Bonito has is an amazing system that you can see there of thermal walls. This is a perimeter wall that condenses the energy, the hot energy during the day, and release it at night on the side. So the exchange of temperature was producing a level of comfort. I didn't live in 1300, I guess, but I think it was an important component of the project. So I analyzed this project in detail, and you see sketches, the room-wide platform, how they were working with all the, and then I came and I said, now let me tell you, the desert, I create what I call the intellectual oasis, which is these diagrams that you see right there, pretty much inspired by the Anasazi cultures. So I create my sustainable design strategies, and you can see in these diagrams. So I took advantage of the wind. You see the wind. This is a freestanding wall that during the day stores the heat, during the night release it. Inside of this one, I have a water providing like a mist, like a sprinkle system throughout the building, creating a very important component, which is called evaporating cooling. I don't know in your engineering class if you are taking any mechanical engineer, but evaporating cooling is a transfer of temperature based on the level of humidity, et cetera, et cetera. So this is an interesting factor, and we use it in this building. So by doing those schemes, the form of the building start being generated. And you see in my diagrams, and this is the current building, built like this. Today, this is the building. We've been able to reduce, and now I'm using a gadget. We've been able to reduce in 42% the air conditioning capacity. In other words, if for a deregular building, we were needing 100% of air conditioning system, we reduced it 42%. I don't need to tell you that in a period of 10 years, the money that the university saved with that system, while sacrificing the design, which is important. That was before even the LEED certification exists. I'm doing as well, which is another interesting challenge, a project on the San Francisco Bay, La Bahía de San Francisco. next to the San Francisco airport. It's a very complicated project because there are a lot of regulations by the San Francisco Bay Commission. And one of them is ensure a view. We need to ensure a 50% view of the bay. We cannot block the view of the bay, which is one of the regulations. And we cannot have more than 35% of land coverage. We cannot occupy the land on more than 35. And we need to leave. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, God. And we need to leave a community path that walks away. So let me tell you how I'm applying my concept here of holistic sustainability. Politically speaking, I need to be dealing with the whole government issues and approval issues and et cetera, plus involving the community. The community has been voting in this project, so it's a political action. From the social component, I'm creating a lot of social amenities that they are not only used by this is a hotel, this is Google, will be occupying one of the buildings, and the other one was Beach Oracle. I don't know the other company. But I'm creating right there a sort of a floating amphitheater on the bay for kayaks, for the community go and use it. This will be, even that belongs, will be managed by this group, belongs to the community. And this is a trail that the Bay Commission, the San Francisco Bay Commission, imposes to maintain along the project. So it's a dense, so the social components is there, the environmental issues are there. So when I'm thinking now more globally, based on my original diagram that I show at the beginning of this lecture, I start, in many ways it's more exciting, and many other one is more restraining. And that's what I'm facing today. These are some of the images of the building. I'm doing on the other side, in a small town called Arcadia in California, a building that is again, this building is already under approval. It's not approved yet, but as well, it's creating a lot of public amenities. And facing south and west, I'm converting through that screen system. That screen system has a sort of a condensers inside that they are captured temperature and releasing to the glass behind the building. And I'm using some light concrete. I mean, a lot of innovation, technological innovation, but still keeping in mind what I said before. One of my last projects that I'm now working on is in downtown LA. And that's, Federico, you will see there what a structural challenge that building is. And the building, you know, I don't know if some of you have been in Los Angeles, but this is located today in downtown LA, which is becoming the hot area of LA. It's across the street from LA Live, or the Staples Center with the Lakers and the Clippers, and the scandal that everybody's reading about the Clippers owner is going on, is probably one of the most appealing places in downtown. So when they gave me the opportunity to design this building, the reason why the building, which is this, I faded out all the other buildings just to show the location of this building. The other ones are real. This is a photo montage, okay? So this building is J.W. Marriott. This is a Staples Center where the Lakers play. This is the Nokia Theater. This is LA Live. And this is the building. So the building has been designed. Number one, facing south to maximize the south intake. Is a commercial area, several levels of retails, a hotel, where you see with atriums, an apartment building. All the skin of the building is a double layer in a sort of a photovoltaic panels. It's a new material has been produced in London, which is very interesting by the firm of Norman Foster, that storage energy and screen the excess of light in the south orientation. So we are experimenting with that technology. Why the building is bended? Everybody say, why the building is bended, Norberto? It's because you want to do something skewed to be nicer? No. Yes, well, not necessarily, no. A little bit, yes, but one of the reasons why the building is bending is because it's facing south, and the courtyards that you see in these images, the courtyards, which are this, that they have 15 palm trees each inside, 7-story high, are the courtyards of the hotel. And the hotel is facing south, so I'm maximizing the sun intake, while the apartments on the top go back. It's a very narrow lot, go back to take advantage of the square footage that the lot offered me. It's 42-story high building. After this building, I want to show something building which is very dear to my heart, and I will tell you why. This is a building, this is the one that I said that received platinum, which is the top qualification. It's the first affordable housing project, el primer proyecto de vivienda económica en todo Estados Unidos, que ha recibido el máximo calificación de LEED certification, which is the platinum one. Why I'm proud about this building? I will tell you why. It's located in one of the most conflictive cities of the region of California. It's called Compton. As a piece of information, Compton is the place where the Serena Williams and Venus Williams were born, you know, and where their sister was killed, because it is a complicated place, very complicated. So I designed this building for developmental disabled people, people who have mental problems, and for poor people. So, holistically speaking, it's a fantastic social issue. Located in a prime location in the intersection of a freeway with the entrance to Compton. But in addition to that, I try to create something where the people feel belonging to it. And you can see there in this project, you know, it's a very simple, straightforward project. Nothing spectacular. Using fiber cement panels, something that is shown, I was telling this gentleman today, all this element that you see there, and let me go back to all these veneers, all the covering of those buildings are with fiber cement panels. And behind the fiber cement panels, I have a waterproof membrane with an insulating panel, reducing again the air conditioning consumption. So I am very proud about this building. And maybe form-wise, design-wise, doesn't have the strength of the other two previous projects, but I think it does a purpose that for an architect like me is very important to deal with. This is another project that I designed in California. It's called Los Lagos. And it's the first project that has been used bamboo, which is a renewable, recyclable material, in an incredible distance and space. It's almost a mile, 1.5 kilómetros de largo, un túnel, done with steel and bamboo. and in between two lakes that I designed, and are becoming a community gathering. People are coming here, they get married on the bridge. It's very interesting what happened, how this building has changed the reality. Moving to one of the last two concepts of holistic sustainability. I was talking about the economic financial component. And we have my partner in this project, that is Kwame Granderson, which is a real estate attorney. He worked with me to visualize what is the challenge when you are dealing with a with a financial component or project of any magnitude. And there we went through some analysis of that. And you see the financial impact, the benefits, the higher occupancy rental. So when I'm designing, or when we are designing a building, we need to have, we cannot be so, tunnel vision. We need to understand that this is a fundamental component of any project. And that's why I've been working with Kwame to get a better understanding of those issues. And finally, the legal parameters that I was talking about, that is, and I'm quoting here some component, the Environmental Protection Agency, that they are adding to these 5 basic components of holistic sustainability. I will finish my presentation, and I think that I'm probably within the time, I guess. I hope so. This is a potpourri, a tutti frutti of my several projects in several places. It's a kind of a display of the building. On the top is a project that I did right on the Lake Pontchartrain